Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In my last video I told you that I was going to the Harrogate Flower Show, which is our spring flower show here in West Yorkshire. So I did go along yesterday. So the flower that I'm going to do today is one that I purchased and I've been wanting for quite a long time because I collect a lot of orchids, and the one that I haven't got, not the only one that I haven't got, but the only one that I haven't got that I wanted was the Vanda orchid. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to make a Vanda orchid, and I have actually got a fresh orchid, so this is sacrilege. I have actually cut one of the flowers off in order to be able to show you, because I can't bring the whole thing up, but I have got a photograph, so I'm just going to get it up on my phone. And then what I'll do is then I'll show you a picture that I've taken of the Vanda orchid that I've got. So I'm just going to turn that round. Right, so I'm going to bring you down to my board. Now if you can see that on my phone, this is the plant as it grows. Now unlike a lot of other orchids, you can plant them in a pot, but they're generally grown hung up, which is what I've done here. It does come with a wire hook, so you can hang it up, or you can put it into a vase with nothing in it, just the roots in it, and you have to spray it, which reminds me I haven't sprayed it today. So this is actually one of the flowers that I've taken off of my Vanda orchid. This one's dying back a bit now. These petals here have gone a bit dark. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make all the parts for that now. So I'll just get rid of those out of the way. Now the equipment that we're going to use is, this is actually a Vanda orchid set of cutters. I can't remember where I got these from, but and then this is a Vanda orchid veiner. Now although you've got veins stood up on the veiner, the actual flower itself, I'll just bring that back over again, doesn't have raised veins on it. It's actually quite smooth. It's a bit of a rough surface, but it hasn't got the raised thing. But the only way to get that detail onto the orchid is by having raised veins. So when you dust it, if I show you one that I've already made, which is this one here, when you dust it, then it catches the veins and you get that effect on it. So I'll just get rid of that, and we'll go on to starting making the parts. I'm going to start off by doing the throat part first. Now this is a bit complicated. This is one that I've already made here, if you can see that. It's not exactly the same as the actual flower, because the actual flower's it's a bit taller on the back part of it there. So I'm just going to get some paste out of here. This is the egg-free paste that I'm using here. So what you need is quite a thick piece, because then it's what we do with it after that that is the important part. So if I get the paste there, and I'm going to roll it so it's quite thick, which I'll show you in a minute how thick it is when I've rolled it out. I'm not going to do too much rolling out on it, so you can see how thick that is. And then I'm going to cut the centre part out of it. You need to make sure you've gone right the way through with that. Just get rid of that to one side, and then if I just get one of my cell sticks and just push that out of the cutter, it looks like a gingerbread man at this stage. Now then, this part here with the double pieces on it is the back part of the throat here, which is actually quite thick. So what I need to do with that now, using my cell stick, I'm going to roll that out like this. Now I'm going to lose some of the shape in there, so I'm going to go onto one side and roll that out, and onto the other side and roll that out, just to get that a bit higher up like that. And then I'm going to go into the centre and make a groove like that, if you can see that. And then what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to roll this part out this way, like that, and then I'm going to curl these parts back like that. You might have to come back to this when it's drying and do that again. Then I'm just going to turn it round this way, and then I'm going to roll out these side pieces here, being careful not to do the centre part and this part here. Roll those out like that, and they're going to be these little side flaps here that come up. And then very carefully I'm going to get hold of the piece that I've got at the end here, the rounded piece, and I'm just going to pinch that, and I'm going to bring that up like that. And that part there is going to be this part here. I'm not going to put a lot of detail in. There is a bit of detail in the top, but if you start trying to get it all in, it's going to be a bit difficult. So what we need to do now is we need to bring those flaps up like that, and then bring the back up like that and curve that round. Now what I need to do now is, obviously you need to get a wire in this. So because this is not too thick, I've got here a 24 gauge wire, and I'm going to get that to go up the back here, in here. So very carefully get that to go into the thick part. Now what you might need to do now, because I'm not putting a hook on this, is to put some glue on your wire, which is what you would normally do if you have paste that tend to come off your wires, and then put that into the back of there like that, up there. So that's now straight up, and now you need to play around with this to bring this up and bring that round to the back. Bring that back up again and just tweak that bit, bring those up, just open that out a little bit because that's just got squashed in. Just need to spend a little bit of time playing around with this just to get it right. Take your time. Make sure you curve that back so they're folding quite a lot round the back there like that. And then when that's dried, and I've just knocked my orchid on the floor, you'll end up with a throat like that. So that's nice and dry, is that one now, so that's ready for me to be able to use. I'll put it against this yellow pad here so you can see it a bit better. So you've got your curved back petals there, you brought your front part up and tweaked that in, and brought your side flaps up at the side. And just bear with me a second, I've just got to pick my orchid up, because I've had it in water for 2 or 3 days, and I'd lost a part for my camera, so I've had to postpone doing this video until I found because I couldn't fix it onto my tripod. But you don't need to know about that, do you? But like I keep saying, I don't edit anything out when I'm doing videos. If something goes wrong, then I've got to put it right so that you can see what I've done if it's gone wrong. Right, so I'm just going to move that to one side. So the next step I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to make a bud. Now the buds are quite a peculiar look on them. They're not like your normal orchid buds. They're like a bobble with a thin back on, and then they've got a hollow in the centre. So I'm just going to make one of those. Just get a small piece of paste, make sure that you've got no cracks in it. Then I'm just going to roll that down like that, and then I've got a 26 gauge wire here, so I'm just going to put a tiny hook on the end of that, and then pop that into the top of the board. Now when you put your hook in, you always end up with a dent in the middle. That doesn't matter with this because it needs to have that dent in the middle anyway. So we're just going to pull the wire down into it so it's well down into the paste so you can't see the wire, and then just thin that down on the back a bit like that, so it's like an upside down cone. And then with your cell stick just go into the centre of it and then just open that out a little bit with the pointed end like that, and then put that to one side to dry. So I put that onto my foam and just get rid of that cutter because I've used that one. So we'll get onto the petals now. As you can see here, I've got two different sizes. Now if you haven't got the cutters for making this, somebody asked me before about making flowers with rose petal cutters. What you can do, you could actually use two sizes of rose petal cutters to do this, because the only difference is really they've got a little flat piece at the bottom, but that doesn't matter because when you put it together you're not going to be able to see that. So I'm going to roll some paste out. I'm only going to do one of each of the petals because I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, because it gets boring for you if you see me doing all the petals. So like I do in all my videos, I've already done my blue Peter bit. I've got pieces already, so I'm going to roll my paste out. Orchids are quite fleshy, so you don't have to go as thin as you do with some of the other flowers. And with this particular one, because of the veining on it, you do need it a little bit thicker than you would normally do it, for the simple reason that if you get it too thin, you wouldn't get the veins standing up like you would on, like you want them to do for this particular orchid. You can get a lot of area surface out of one small piece of paste, and I've rolled too much out here because I don't need all this. If I was doing the full flower then I would need all this, but I'm not. But just to show you. So I'm going to go back to my trusty groove rolling pin. If you haven't got this, then do use the groove side of your board, and don't forget to roll it out on the groove side, take it off your board and turn it over. And I've picked something up there, I've picked some colour up, never mind, it's purple, so that's going to be used on this anyway. So I'm only going to roll that bit out, so I'm going to just cut out one of each petal. Now what you need for this is the small petal, you want two of those. I'll just make sure that's cut through, and then you want three of the large petal. Take your paste away. I'll have to cut a wire now because I haven't got any ready. I'm using a 26 gauge wire, same as I do for most petals, and I'm going to cut the wires into 4. Unlike a lot of people, I don't believe in wasting wires. A lot of people, when they're demonstrating, use far too much wire and then they're cutting bits off and throwing it away. I don't believe in waste. That's the way I was brought up because I was born in the 1940s, so we were still in the rationing period after the war when I was born, so up until into the early 50s we were still on rations. For you younger ones that are not that old, you won't remember any of that, but I'm sure that somebody in your family somewhere, grandparents or somebody like that, will probably know about all that here in the UK. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist the wire into the petal. I've gone about that far up the petal. Just feel it between your finger and your first finger and your thumb. That's the way to get your wires in, so you know where the wire is and you can feel if it comes out of your paste. And like I said before, if it comes out, then just pull it back and go back in again. Then you don't have to keep rolling your paste out and doing more. So we've got the 2 petals there. So the next step I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my tool pad and thin the edges. Just get rid of those scissors. So with a medium ball tool, I'm just going to go around the edge just to take that thickness off, because when you're doing your paste thick you need to get the thin edges on. Doesn't matter so much about the middle part on these fleshy flowers, but you do need it to be thinner on the edges, like that. Right, so once you've done that, we put that to one side and get the veiner. Now remember, with the veiner, the wide part is the top part of your petal and the narrow part is the bottom part. Now the thing is with these veiners, and this is where you need to be careful, with most veiners, your raised veins are on the back, particularly when you're doing leaves and things like that. With this particular flower, the raised veins are going to be on the front. So I'm going to put that in that way, with the groove down that way, and then put that on like that. Give it a good press, and there we have the raised veins on it. So I'm just going to do this other petal. So again, ridge part down onto your grooves on there, that's the back part of your petal, and then the top part, what would be the back on most things, goes on top, which is your front, if that makes sense. You might have to play this back a few times to get that to sink in, but you are doing, with this veiner, you are doing things the wrong way around. Right, so once I've done that, I'll just get rid of that veiner out of the way for a minute, and I'm going to bring I'll leave that on there, my foam over. I've got my colours on here, so just get my petals out. Whoops, I'm going to knock my orchid over again. I need to move that out of the way so I don't do that again. Right, so before I do that, I'm just going to get rid of that paste for a minute. Get that out of the way. And I'm going to put my petal back onto my pad with the raised veins face up, and then get my ball tool, and I'm just going to go around the top edge here. Just bring my camera up a bit this way so you can see what I'm doing here, onto the top edge, and I'm just going to go around that top edge just so it's not flat. Now normally I don't do this after I've done the veining, but on this particular orchid you do need to do this. Tried a couple of ways of doing it thinning the edges like I do with the silk veining tool on petals. So would have been better if I'd have put it down on my board if I'd have done this first, but I just don't want that to be totally flat on the edge. The reason for that is, when I put it into my foam, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over so the front is facing down, and then put it into your foam like that, so it cups your petals back a bit. So if I go into there like that, so these are some dry ones that I've got. Basically the petals are going backwards rather than upwards. Like I say, you might need to play this video back a few times just to get that to sink in. But the advantage of doing demonstrations on YouTube, other than doing it in a classroom situation, which I am used to, is that you can do that. You can go back and repeat it over and over again. And I did promise all my students that I would do some videos for them to go back to when they'd finished, and unfortunately while I was still teaching I never got time to do it. I did do some on Facebook, but now that I've got my YouTube channel, I post it on our page and they can go back and watch them as many times as they want. Right, so we've got all that. We've got the pieces that are dry. That's a soft one, that's a dry one, and that's a dry one. Right, so I'm just going to get rid of those out of the way so I've got more room to work in here. And I'm going to bring my dry petals in and my throat. So the colours that I'm using here, as you can see on here, I've got purple, which is Empress Purple from Edible Art, or whatever colour you want it to be. I'm not doing it quite as dark as the actual orchid that I've got, because they do come in different shades of purple, white, and like a burgundy colour as well, which is quite nice. But I wanted the purple one when I bought it. I could have had a white one or a burgundy one, but I wanted the purple one because purple's my favourite colour anyway. Right, so I've got a brush here that I use just for things like purple and burgundy and things like that. You don't want a lot of powder on your brush when you're doing this, because you want to keep some of the white background. It doesn't matter if you blot some of it in, but you want some of the white showing through so you can see the pattern on the petal. So start from the edge and brush in all the way down your petal like that. And then just go over it and just build it up until you get the colour that you want. And then the other one, I need a bit more powder on. Yeah. Like that. So you want the veins to stand out a darker colour. It doesn't matter if you get some lilac into there, and then turn them over and do the same on the other side. Doesn't matter about the back because that's not going to be seen anywhere. So just go all over that with your lilac, because the veins don't stand off on the back for this particular thing. That doesn't matter. But obviously, if people do catch a look at the back of the petals are the same colour as the front, but not as much detailing in it. So that's your petals done. Now this is where you need to be careful. So I'm going to use a smaller brush for this, for colouring the throat part of the flower. So I'm going to get some more purple on here because I didn't put the right lot on. There we are. Now what you need is the back part here, where the petals curve back, that wants to be quite a deep purple. And then the other parts want to be a lighter colour. And this part here in the middle needs to be sort of white with a bit of yellow on the top there. So, and a little bit of red. So I'm going to start with the back. I'm going to start inside and do that first. So you just need to be careful, don't get too much dust on your brush, because you don't want it to go where you don't want it to be. Don't matter so much about the underneath part because you can't see that for the petals. And just start from the edge and very carefully brush it in. It's probably a good idea when you're doing this to start from the bottom when you've got your edges done and go upwards rather than going down, so that any dust flicks off this way, because it is quite dark. Is that darker than your petals? I'll show you the actual flower again in a minute so you can see what I mean. You could actually paint that on if you wanted to as well, but just be careful that you don't get it streaky if you're going to do that, because painting sometimes can be a bit streaky. And again on the back I'm just going to go over that just to make sure that I've got that quite dark. There we are. So that's that part. And then on the wing part I'm not going to put any more colour on my brush. I'm just going to brush the wing part. So it's going to be a slightly lighter colour like the petals. Now if you were doing a darker one like the actual flower, then you would go a bit heavier on there as well with that. But then it would be best to paint that part on as well, because you need to get it really dark. If you want to get it really dark on there, because we're painting on white, you could mix a bit of black in with it to make it a bit darker. Right, so I've got the side petals done. Missed a bit there. And then what I'm going to do is, under here, I'm just going to give it a little bit of purple, so it just shows just underneath there. So if I just pop that down for a minute and bring the real flower across again and show you, you've got a little bit of purple under there, lilac on the sides there, and then this part is a deep purple. There are some other ridges on there, but trying to get all that in sugar is very difficult. When you're doing flowers, really, I mean, it depends how much time you've got and whether you're going in for a competition, but if you're doing them for a cake, you haven't got time to spend doing all that sort of thing, and most people wouldn't know. As far as they're concerned, it looks like a Vanda orchid, and that's what they're getting. Right, so I'm going to go on to my yellow brush now. So I've got a bit of sunflower yellow here, so I'm just going to put some right in the centre there, a little bit on the edge of there, and then with my red, I've got an even smaller brush, and this one I'm using Ruby, I think it's called, is this one. I'm just going to catch the very top there with a little bit of the red, just like that. You don't need a lot on there, it's only just a hint of colour. If I bring the flower back and show you again, you've just got that little bit of red round there. Right, so that's that. So once you've got all your bits and pieces made, then of course then there's the bud. Now I'm just going to switch off for a minute and I'm going to go back down and look at my orchid and see what the colouring looks like on there, because it's a bit different. Right, I've had a look at the buds downstairs, so that's my dry one and that's the one I've just done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to colour both of these buds, the one that I've just made and one that I'd already got dried, to show you the difference between the buds. So I'm going to get some more purple on my brush. Now this is for an older bud, so basically that is just a dark purple all over. Again, I say you could paint this if you wanted to get it a really dark colour. I'm leaving it a little bit lighter just at the base of the bud there. Let's pop that over there. And then this one is going to be, which would be the smaller buds right on the end that haven't quite coloured. So there's a little bit of purple on the top. And then it's a bit yellowy towards the bottom, so I'm just going to go back in with the yellow. I'm not going in too heavy, I just want to give it a hint so that I'm colouring this and it's not white. You could mix a little bit of the red in with it. I've picked a bit up there that I've got into it as well. I mean, that sort of adds a little bit more to the realism of it. So that's going to be a smaller bud. That's a lot too big for a small bud, but basically that's what it's going to look like before it's fully ripe, shall we say, ready for opening. Right, so if I get rid of all of those out of the way now, we can start assembling. The fascinating thing with this particular orchid, while I'm just sorting these things out, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. As I say, it hangs up rather than being in a pot like other orchids, and the reason for that is because these orchids grow in trees. So I'll just pop those there, and they get the moisture out of the air. So what I have to do is I have to spray it at least 2 to 3 times a day. When it gets into the hot weather, I have to spray it about 3 times a day. If you look at the roots on them, this goes for Phalaenopsis orchids as well if you're growing them, because a lot of people make the mistake of overwatering orchids and that's why they lose them. They're a tropical plant, so they don't need a lot of water. I'm just going to start my tape off underneath there, like that. And what you have to do is, if you look at the roots, it'll tell you when it needs watering. So here's a bit of gardening information for you as well. The roots turn white. When they're looking white, it needs watering. And with Phalaenopsis orchids, you get the whole pot, get a bowl or something full of water. It wants to be a bit tepid, it doesn't want to be cold in winter time, so make sure that you put some warm water in it as well. And then you dip it in once, let it drain, in once, let it drain, in once, let it drain, and then that's your orchid water. Don't have it stood in water, they don't like it. And by the same token, the Vanda orchid, if you have that, what you do is you have a spray bottle of water and you spray the roots, because they're the same. They turn white when they want water, and then they're green when you've sprayed them with water. And then obviously you want to feed to give it every so often. So I'm just going to bring that up. I'm not going to bring it right up to the top because I want to get these petals in. So I've got my petals in. We'll just get all the relevant sizes out. And should have a smaller one somewhere. There, that's a small one. So I've got my two small ones and I've got the larger ones. So I'm going to start off by putting the large ones in. So first of all, bend your wire down. Remember that the petal is curving back this way. And then they more or less go in the same as they do with any other orchid. So you want two that go behind the throat. Like that. You can adjust this once you get them all in. You can get your petals in the right position, because they're going to move around while you're trying to get them in. And then your third petal goes in facing the little bump lip there at the front. So I'm just going to tape down a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all my wires in. Make sure everything is nice and tight in so they don't move around once you get them into position. So pull them in so they're nice and tight, and then you can tape down a bit. And then what I'm going to do now, before I go any further, I'm going to pull that petal round and get them all in the position that I want them to be in, like that. And then you can tape all the way down. And as I've said before, don't be frightened of wasting tape. Tape all the way down, because when you come to put your next petals in, they grip better and should stay in position a lot better, so you don't have to mess about as much. Right, so take that off and go back up to the top again, underneath your petals. Start your tape off, nip it in, and bring that right up underneath your petals. There we are. Now you can bring your petals up a little bit so you don't catch them with your finger, and then get your two small petals, again with the petals curving down. Pop that in under there between those two petals. Whoops, broke my tape off. Start it off again. And then your other petal for the other side, in like that. Get it right in, so make sure it's on top of your other petals, like that. And then tape down. Always make sure you stretch with one hand and roll between your finger and thumb with the other hand. With practice you will get, I know people take a bit of time getting used to it, but eventually you will, the more you do it. There we are. So once we've got that down, then we can have a look at your petals and we can make sure that everything is in the right position then. So there we are. That's that that flower put together. So I'm just going to pop that down there, and I've left one of my flowers downstairs, so I'm just going to pop down and get that. Right, so I've just had a look at my flower again to make sure I get the orchids the right way up, because sometimes when you're doing things like this, it's very easy to get them the wrong way up. So I've just got some full width tape to tape it all together, but before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape the buds, because some of the stems probably going to be showing a little bit. So I'm just going to cover them with the same coloured tape so that everything is uniform. And again, it helps when you're taping everything together to get your buds to the wires to grip better as well when you're taping things together. Just push that up so that's right underneath the flower, tape down. So I'm using the soft one as well that I started off with. Now what you can do if you want, you could put these onto a stronger wire, but the wires are quite strong when you've taped them all together like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with this bud first. So I'm going to start with my full width tape. Just find out which is the stickiest side. For anybody that hasn't used it before, that's the stickiest side because that stuck to my finger like that. So I'm going to turn that over and get that towards the wire. It just means that they grip better if you do that. Right, so I'm going to start that. And bear in mind as well, I mean they have got quite thick stems on them, on these orchids, that it will thicken your wire up a little bit as well, so you get a thicker stem. So we'll start off with the one at the top that's not got all the purple on, and then we're going to go in with the next one quite close together at this point. I'm just going to bring that up a little bit. And then I'm going to go into the orchids, and I haven't got anything fully partly open, so I can't give you a picture because I bought the orchid in flower. So I'm just going to bend that up, and then I'm going to pop this in there so the buds are just showing in between the petals on that one. Tape down a bit further. I might use this on a wedding cake dummy. Beautiful orchid. And this part on a lot of the flowers, not all of them, some of them are different, just face downwards. So the tall part of the orchid, which is this part here, they sort of face down that way on the orchid. Bear in mind that the leaves are underneath, so they're pointing down towards the leaves. I did get criticised in a competition once by Alan Dunn saying that my orchids were the wrong way up, which is very easily done. And when you're doing sugar flowers, you do tend to study flowers quite closely, because if you're going to copy something, you need to make sure that you get it as near as genuine as you can. I'm just going to bring that out a little bit to that side, take that down a bit, then I'm going to put another orchid in, bend that up a little bit. You want a little bit of stem on them. Oops, sorry, just knock the camera there, bring it back down again. Now I've gone the wrong way around on that one, haven't I? Just make sure that your tape's nice and flat so it doesn't crease up. I'm just going to bring that orchid out a little bit further to that side. And then put another one in. So again, I'm going to bend that wire up. If any of your petals move around, once you get everything together, you can adjust that. I'm just going to tape down right down to the bottom here for this one before I put the last one in, just so it stops anything from moving about, so I can get them all in the right position. There we are, like that. And then put the last one in. and I'm going to put that one in sort of in the middle here between these, so that it fills that in. Because when you're doing a spray on a cake, you don't want to see all the wires and things like that, so you need to fill in with something so they can't. So we're going to put that orchid in about there. I'm just going to bring that one up there a little bit, bring that up this way a little bit, and tape down. I broke my tape. This rule applies for any sprays that you're doing as well. Once you get it all taped down and all taped together, then you can go in and you can play around with it and adjust your wires and bend them to where you want them to be. And you don't want straight wires when you're doing sprays either, because they don't grow straight. So there we are. There's my spray of Vanda orchids. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and you'll come back and see me in the next one, and I'll bring the live one over as well to show you that as well. Turn that round that way so you can see the flower. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and come back and see me in all the new ones, because I've got plenty to do. If you've got any comments about anything or any questions about anything that you've seen in my videos, then please leave a message down in the comments below, and I'll get back as soon as I can. And yeah, and if you've got any suggestions about anything you'd like to see, I don't know if I've just said that or not, I'm probably repeating myself, please let me know if there's anything that you'd like to see, and I will try and endeavour to do that for you. So take care, stay safe, and see you in the next video.